Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Today we are going to discuss some theory on options, wherein I'll be discussing how options prices are getting affected, what are the factors. It's a very, very important concept. From practical point of view, as to when we do sums, you will understand each and everything that affects the option pricing. And from exam point of view also, usually it is asked for 10 marks as theory question. So if you listen carefully and understand it here, just one time reading would do the work. Otherwise, you will have to read it again and again because the technical things in that. And in the afternoon class at 1:30, we will do sums on payoff graphs of option holders. And if that gets over early, we will also start with the arbitrage problems. So first we'll understand little bit theory and then we'll go there. Is the screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We had done all this theory before your eye, and option, moneyness, intrinsic value, time value. I taught you all this. Now let's continue with the rest. Options and the OCC. OCC is nothing but Option Clearing Corporation. For stock market, this for derivatives market, the Option Clearing Corporation acts as an intermediary. The provisions specified on the option contract are guaranteed by the Option Clearing Corporation. The buyers and the sellers of the options do not deal with each other directly. So whoever wants to buy an option contract or want to sell, they don't meet each other directly, but they go through the Option Clearing Corporation. Instead, the clearing corporation acts as an intermediary between them by issuing standardized options and by ensuring that the options contracts are honored. So to avoid risk, the clearing house acts as a intermediary between the buyer and seller, and he sees to it that the option contracts are honored. The OCC comes into picture only after two parties trade a contract. So when there is a buyer and seller, only then the OCC comes into picture as an intermediary. It takes an opposite position to each of the traders. So if I am the buyer, Option Clearing Corporation will be the seller for me. It is taking opposite position. If I am the seller, Option Clearing Corporation will act as a buyer. They are not actually buying or selling, they are acting as an intermediary. They will find someone else to buy, but for me, because I have given it to them, they become the buyer. Thus, the buyer of an option relies on the OCC for fulfillment of contractual obligations. Similarly, the option writer has an obligation to the OCC. So, if you are an option holder, you will ask the option clearing corporation that your option should be honored. If you decide to buy, then the option clearing corporation should guarantee you that you will be able to buy it. And the writer, the seller of the option, is obliged to the option clearing corporation. So, one person is basically the decision maker and the other person needs to oblige to whatever the decision is taken. So that was Option Clearing Corporation. The next is open interest. This we had discussed when I was doing first unit also. Open interest is nothing but number of outstanding contracts in the market. So how many option contracts are traded in the market and are still not settled? We call them as open interest. So the contracts are still open, the maturity date has not reached and they are not settled. So every new contract you enter, a new contract gets added. So just understand it's nothing but the total number of contracts that are getting traded in the market. Every time a trader takes a long or a short position in an option contract, it either adds to his existing interest in the option or reduces it. So if you take a new position as a buyer or a seller, either you have taken a new option, so it adds to the open interest, or you have closed the option, it will reduce the open interest. To illustrate, if an investor already holds a net long position in an option contract, a new long position will add and a new short position will reduce his exposure in the contract. So if you have already taken a buying position in an option contract, you take one more contract, and there also if you are a buyer, that means you have two contracts now. In both you are the buyer, so your open interest increased from one contract. Now I am saying you have two contracts. But suppose you have one contract where you have taken long position as a buyer, and you take one more contract where you take a short position as seller. That means in one place you will buy and immediately in the other place you will sell. So I will not say it has added to your open interest. I will say it has reduced your open interest because your risk has come down. You have taken both the positions. At one place if you're going to buy, other place you can sell it off. So it's like the contract is settled already. Only for maturity date we are waiting. However, sorry, one second. However, at any given point in time, the total outstanding long position in respect of an option contract are exactly equal to the short position. So, at any point of time, the buyers will be exactly equal to the sellers, because if there are no sellers, there is no use of a buyer. If there are no buyers, there is no use of a seller. So, for a contract, there should be one buyer and there should be one seller. So, the buyers are equal to the sellers. The number of outstanding positions at a given time is known as open interest. By outstanding position, we mean that these contracts are not settled. They are still getting traded. They are outstanding. That means they're waiting for the maturity date or settlement period to happen. Option to the option holders. Can anyone tell me who is an option holder? A option holder is a person who has the right to buy or who has the right to decide. Not buy, he can also decide for selling. So if you have taken an option and you have the right to decide, I'll call you as an option holder. Let's take our class example only. Suppose I tell you I'm taking class at 10 o'clock, and if you want you can attend or else no, because it's a special class, maybe extra class. So those who want, only they can attend. So what I'm doing, I'm giving you an option. So you become an option holder. You can decide whether you want to attend the class or no. There's no compulsion of attendance or anything, because this is a special class or an extra class just to clarify the doubts. So if there are no doubts, you can decide not to attend. If there are doubts, you can decide to attend. So you have the option, the choice. So I call you as option holder. And who is giving you that choice? I am giving you that choice. So I am option writer. I'm writing and giving you the choice to decide, the right to decide. So a person who has the right to decide is called as the option holder. He can decide whether he wants to buy or no if he has taken a call option, or he can decide whether he wants to sell or no if he has taken a put option. So what can an option holder do? Now he has an option already in hand. So what can he do with that? So that is what they're saying, options to option holders. So what all options he has? First is do nothing. That means you just sit. He sits tight and waits for the expiry date. So suppose you have taken an option to buy XYZ company shares after 3 months. So you can wait for 3 months to get over and then decide you want to buy it or no. So you are doing nothing. You're just waiting for the maturity date to appear. Second he can do is close out the position in the option market. Now you have decided, you have taken a call option and you are planning to buy that share in the future. Suppose you don't want to buy it, you want to move out of that contract, you can actually close out the position. How? This may be done by reversing the transaction, so that, for example, one who is long the call option, that is one who owns a call option, may write a matching call option, or the one who is written a call earlier may buy one. Also, the owner of the call or put may sell it at the current market price. So how do you close out your position? You can just tell your broker, I have this right to of call option. I have a call option with me. I don't want it. So can you find somebody else? The broker will find somebody else who wants a call option on XYZ company shares. You can sell it to them and you can move out. Or what you can do is, if you have taken a call option, enter into another contract where you write a call option. So here you have bought it, there you are selling it. So you close out your position. So there are two ways to close out your position. Simply ask your broker to sell the call option that you have because you are not interested in holding it anymore, or you keep this call option with you, enter into another contract and you become the writer. You give call option to somebody else. So in one contract you have the option, in another contract you have written or given the option. So that also helps in closing out. Exercise the option. The third is you don't close out the position, you wait for maturity or even before maturity in case of American options, on or before maturity date. So if it's an American one, in case of a call option, the call writer would have to deliver the underlying asset and the holder of the call would pay an amount equal to the exercise price. Similarly, in case of put option, it is the opposite. So if it's an American option, you need not wait till the maturity date. Whenever you feel like, you can buy the product and the writer of the option will sell you the product and you need to pay the price. So there are three things that you can do as a call option holder. One is do nothing, wait till the expiry date and then take a decision. Second is, you if you feel I don't want this call option, I don't want to wait till the expiry date, you ask your broker to sell it to somebody else and come out of it, or you keep this, enter into another contract where you become a writer. Here if you're a holder, you take opposite position, there you become a writer. It will be like you have closed out, one bought, other sold. Or third one is you exercise the option. If it is an American option, you need not wait to till the due date, you can exercise it before that. Option to the option writer. Now I told you, you have to decide whether you want to attend the class or no. So you are an option holder, you had three choices: you do nothing, or you close out your position, or you exercise your option. But in case of me as an option writer who has told you to decide, I have only two choices. One is do nothing. I have to sit quietly and wait for you to decide. If you all decide to attend my class and you come at 10 o'clock, I'll take the class. If you all decide not to attend the class and nobody joins at 10 o'clock, I will not take the class. So I cannot do anything. I have to just wait and wait for your decision because you have the right to decide. I have given you that particular right. Or secondly, I can close out. In this case, he does a reverse trade. So in, suppose in this option I have given you a call option, I am the writer, I'll enter into another option contract where I'll become a holder. So I'm taking a reverse trade or a opposite position so that I can close out this position. Okay, so this is what is the option with the writer. Now this is also very important concept. For 3 marks, it's asked in many papers. Covered and naked calls. Now what are covered and naked calls? Let's understand it with an example. Okay, suppose Amit, okay, is um, let me okay. Suppose Amit has written a call option. Return means he has given a call option to me and I am the holder. Okay, on let us say IRFC shares. Okay, so what Amit is telling, that you can take the call option. I have the call option, I can decide to buy. I have right to buy. So whenever I tell Amit that yes, I want to buy IRFC shares, he will sell it to me and I will pay him the price. So Amit is a call option writer. I am the call option holder. Now, suppose we enter into a contract today, that is on 11th of June, and on 15th of June, I tell Amit, give me the IRFC shares, I want to buy them, take this price. So, Amit has to instantly give it to me. To give it to me, he should first have those shares. Correct? So, if Amit has those shares in his Demat account, we call it as a covered call. That means you already have the asset in hand and you are entering into a contract where you have decided to sell that asset. So whenever the buyer asks, you simply go and sell it and take your money. So if you have asset in hand, we call it as covered call. Let us take another example. Suppose there is a farmer who enters into an option where he wants to sell 100 quintals of wheat, and you have decided to buy that wheat. So suppose after 5 days you tell the farmer, yes, I want to buy the wheat. You deliver the wheat at my place and take the money. So if the farmer has already cultivated and he has the stock of wheat, he comes and immediately delivers and takes the money. That is called as a covered call. That means you already have the asset and then you are entering into a contract to sell that particular asset. Okay, so the person who holds the option will buy. Call is right to buy. And you are the writer of the option, you need to sell him. Now, what is naked call? In case of naked call, you don't have the security with you, but you still enter into a call option as a writer. So, as I said, suppose I'm the call option holder and Amit is the writer. So, whenever I want to buy, Amit has agreed to sell, but he doesn't have IRFC shares. Okay, he doesn't hold it, so it is not covered. There is no backup. He doesn't has the asset, but he has entered into a contract. That is called as naked call. So whenever I will tell Amit, sell me IRFC shares, I'm ready to buy today, as I have the right to decide and I have the right to buy. So what he will do, he doesn't has it. It's a naked call which he entered into. So he will go into the open market, contact the broker, search for those shares, buy it at whatever price they are available, and then sell it to me. So usually the naked calls are risky because the person who has entered into the option to sell those, he doesn't has the underlying asset. Okay, and he will arrange for it at the end moment when the exercise of the option is happening. Did you understand these? Covered is when you have the asset backup in hand and you are entering into a contract. Naked call is you don't have a asset but you have still entered into a contract, and whenever the contract gets exercised, you rush and buy it in the open market at whatever price available and try to settle it. Is that fine?
Yes, ma'am.
So this can be 3-mark questions, distinguish between covered call and naked call, or it can also come explain covered call, explain naked call individually also it can be asked. Let's go to the next. Margin requirement. As in the case of futures contract, the performance of the options contract is also assured by the option exchange. When the buyer of the option enjoys the right of its performance on the exchange has to in turn make sure that the requirement exists as a form of collateral to ensure that the writer of a naked call can fulfill the terms of the contract. The requirement vary depending upon the brokerage firm, the price of the underlying asset, the price of the option, and whether the option is a call or a put option. So there is no compulsion of keeping a margin requirement. Usually the broker will ask for margin money or safety deposit only when the broker sees that the person is trading with a naked call. That means he doesn't has the underlying security, so it's very risky. He's going to buy it at the end moment and settle. So for such contracts, usually they say that you have to pay something or keep something as security, as a collateral, so that there is guarantee that you will perform. Okay, otherwise the person may not perform for it. So there is no compulsion of margin requirement. It depends upon the broker, and how much amount also depends upon who is the broker, brokerage firm, what is the asset, whether it's a call or a put option, what is the price of the option. All those factors are considered. So we will not be doing any problems on margin requirement in options because it varies from person to person, and whether to take or no also depends. In case of futures and forwards, there was compulsory margin requirement, so we had done sums on margin account. Now this part I had told you before starting the class is very important, which is option pricing and then factors affecting option pricing. So when I option pricing, we have discussed earlier the option price or option premium. So I had already told you option premium is nothing but the amount that is paid to the option writer by the option holder, right? Because if I am giving you right to decide, I will not give it for free. You will have to pay me something. So you're giving me some amount which is called as the premium or price of that option. This is because to begin with, we assume that there are no transaction costs involved in trading in the options, whether buying or selling. In such a situation, an investor can buy or sell shares and options at a single price without paying any commission, or buying or selling can be done instantaneously. So initially when we discussed option premium, we didn't take into account taxes, transaction cost, interest and all those. So it was very simple. The option holder who wants to decide, who wants to take the right, has to pay some price to the option writer for taking that right of decision making. In reality, however, at any time there are two prices, the bid price and the ask price, with the ask price being greater than the bid price. So for an option price, there are always two prices. One is the bid price and the other is the ask price. And ask price is always bigger than the or greater than the bid price. So the bid price is the price at which one is prepared to buy an option, and the ask price is the price at which one is prepared to sell the option. Okay. Now let's take this with an example. Like this, it will get a little tough. Let me take example of two of your classmates only. Suppose Soumya and Shreya want to enter into contract. Okay. So what happens is Soumya is ready to give the option and Shreya wants that option. She wants to take decision. So she says, you give me the option. I will decide whether I want to buy or no, whether I want to sell or no. Soumya says, okay, I'm not interested in deciding. I'll give you the right. You decide. Now what happens is Soumya will not give that option for free. She will tell her, see, I am giving you a choice to decide. I am giving you a right to decide, for which you will have to pay some price. So Soumya is the one who is selling the option, selling that right. And Shreya is the one who is buying that right. Okay. So when a seller sells, he will ask for a price. Remember this. Soumya is asking for a price. Soumya says, I'll give you the option. You can decide, but you have to pay me 10 rupees per share. That is what she is asking, because she has to get that money. Okay. And now what Shreya will say, she will bid. She will say, no, no, Soumya, 10 rupees is too high. I can pay you 8 rupees. So she is bidding. Are you all getting my logic? Ask price is of the seller, and the seller always will ask for more money. Bid price is of the buyer, and the buyer will always bargain and try to give as less as possible. So they say ask price is always greater than the bid price. You go to market to buy mangoes with your father today, suppose, and you go and ask the mango seller, for how much are you giving a box of mangoes? He will say 350. That is his ask price. Are you going to pay him 350 and get the mangoes home? No. Your father will bargain. He will say, sorry, I can give you 250. Are you ready? So 250 is the bid price. So the seller is asking for 350, you are bidding for 250. If the seller agrees, the contract will get executed, you will pay money, you will get the mangoes home. If the seller doesn't agree, he will say, no, sorry, I can't reduce the price, you can go and take it from somewhere else. So ask price is the seller's price, which Soumya is asking for, giving the option, and bid price is Shreya's price, which she is telling, see, I can give you only this much. So the seller's price is always higher than the buyer's price. The ask price is always higher than the bid price. The difference between the bid and ask price is the bid ask spread, which is source of profit for the market makers. So now this bid ask price basically is done through an intermediary. So whatever is the difference between this bid and ask price, that is the gain of the intermediary. So the difference between the two prices, we call it as spread. Okay, so 350 and 250, the difference is 100 rupees. That 100 rupees is the spread that the intermediaries or the brokers are going to earn. Okay, now let's take an example. You don't go to the market to buy mangoes. A lady comes at your doorstep to sell you the mangoes. From where she has bought? She's bought it from the market. So maybe she's bought it for 250 and she's selling it to you for 350. So what is she getting? 100 rupees. That 100 rupees is bid ask spread, which is taken by the intermediary who is helping in getting the trade happen. So this is how option pricing is explained. So in the option pricing, there will be a seller's price, there will be a buyer's price, and the difference between the two prices will be the gain of the intermediary. Now, how a option price is decided, what are the factors that are affecting the decision making of option price, we'll understand in today's class. The first is the stock price. When a call option is exercised, the payoff resulting therefrom equals the excess of stock price over the exercise price. Okay. I hope you remember moneyness of the option. When we did call option, I told you the formula is S naught minus E. What is S naught? It is the spot price and E is the exercise price. So here they are telling that only in a call option, the payoff or the income comes when you do S naught minus E, that is stock price minus exercise price. Thus, a call option is always more valuable if stock price increases and less valuable if it decreases. When you're doing S naught minus E, you always want S naught to be higher because S naught minus E will determine your profit. So if stock price is 100, exercise price is 90, so 100 minus 90, your profit is 10 rupees. So if the stock price increases from 100 to 110, 110 minus 90, profit is 20 rupees. If it increases to 130, 130 minus 90, profit is 40 rupees. So as the stock price increases, a call option holder will gain because for him the formula is stock price minus exercise price. But if the stock price decreases, the call option holder will lose. So from 100, if the stock price becomes 80, you will do 80 minus 90. Loss is minus 10. So when you're deciding on a call option price, if the stock prices are higher than the exercise price, that option is more attractive. Many people want to buy it. So as a seller, you can demand for more premium because you're selling an attractive option. But if the stock prices are falling and your exercise price is high, then there will be no demand for such contracts. People may not be willing to buy, or only a few people will be willing to buy. In that case, your premium will be very low because the option is not that attractive. The opposite of that holds good for a put option. In case of put option, the formula is E minus S naught, that is exercise price minus spot price. So here you want your exercise price to be higher and the spot price or the stock price to fall down. So when in a call option, whenever the stock price increases, the call option holder gains. But in a put option, when the stock price decreases, the put option holder gains. So this is a logic you will have to understand. Put is exactly opposite to call because the formula is reverse. There it is S naught minus E. In case of put, it is E minus S naught. So E should be higher, exercise price, and the market price should fall. Only then the put option holder will gain. So stock price is the first factor that affects the option pricing. So how much premium to pay can be decided looking at the stock price of that particular share on which you are trading in the option contract. Okay, so whether it's a call option, yes, if it is a call option and the stock prices are increasing, you will have to pay more premium. If it is a call option, stock prices are decreasing, you can get it at a low premium. Similarly, put option, stock price decreasing, you will have to pay high premium. Stock price increasing, you will have to pay low premium. So this is the first factor. Second is exercise price. Now what price is decided in the option? The exercise price at which we are going to buy or sell at a later date is also important, and it also affects in the decision of how much premium or price to pay. A call option with a higher exercise price cannot be expected to be valued higher than another call with the same parameters but with a lower exercise price. Let's understand this. Suppose there is a call option where, suppose there is a call option on TCS shares. Okay, one option says that you can buy TCS shares after so many days at a price of rupees 250. So exercise price in the first option is 250. The other option says you can buy TCS shares after so many days at an exercise price of 300. So both the options are exactly similar. They are on TCS shares. They are after a certain days. Everything is same. Only the exercise price is different. One allows you to buy for 250. The other allows you to buy for 300. Now tell me, which option would you prefer? Would you prefer an option which is allowing you to buy TCS shares at 250, or would you prefer an option which is allowing you to buy TCS shares for 300? Yes, anybody, you want to buy TCS for 250 or 300?
250, ma'am.
250.
Because you want to buy at a lower price. So the option which has less exercise price, 250, will be valued more than the option which has a higher exercise price of 300. So if there are two similar options with all the parameters same, but only the exercise prices are different, the option with the lower exercise price will be valued more. In case of a call option, when you are a buyer, you want to pay low. But in case of put option, opposite happens. In case of a put option, if you are a seller, now think from seller's point of view. You want to sell TCS for 250 or you want to sell TCS for 300?
300.
300, ma'am.
300. Yes, so put option is right to sell. So in case of put option, the option with higher exercise price is better. But in case of call option, the option with lower exercise price is better. So that's what they're saying is the exercise prices are different of two options. In case of call option, you will choose which has lower exercise price, and in case of put option, you will choose which has higher exercise price. Another shortcut way to understand it, the formula for call option is S naught minus E. So if the E value is less, you will gain more. You want market price to be more, stock price, and E should be less. So whichever option gives the lower exercise price, you will gain in case of call option. Whereas for put option, it is E minus S naught. Now you don't want E to be less, you want E to be more, because higher minus lower will give you profit. So you can understand it like that also. So exercise price also determines what would be the price of your option or the premium of the option. The next is time to maturity. If it is an American call or a put option, becomes more valuable as the time to expiration increases. In case of two comparable calls, the one with a longer life will not be valued lower than the one with a shorter life. So if you have two call options and one option gives you maturity after 1.5 months and the other call option gives you maturity after 2 months. So you will always choose the option with the maturity of 2 months because you're getting more time to decide. You can wait for 2 months and decide. And anyways, if it is an American call option allows you to decide on or before the expiry date. You enter into a contract today and you can take decision tomorrow also. Or you can wait for full 2 months also. So you always want the options with the higher maturity date because you get more time to decide. You can look at the market, you can study, and whenever you feel that you're going to benefit, you can buy in case of a call option or even in case of a put option. Whenever you feel the market is favorable, you can sell. So for an American call option, having longer maturity dates are better because you have a choice to exercise it on or before maturity. So you need not wait for full 2 months. Even after 1 month, you can exercise. But if you get full 2 months period, you can decide whenever you want, you exercise. So you will wait for the right price and take decision. But this is not the case in case of a European option, because the European option will give you the choice of exercising only on the maturity date, not before that. So the European put and call options do not necessarily become more valuable as the time of expiration increases, since the owner of the option with a longer life does not enjoy opportunities open to the owner of the one with a shorter life, since the option can be exercised only at maturity. So here, if it is an American option, we can take a longer time period option. It's more better. But in case of a European option, you can exercise only on the maturity date. So 1.5 month option and 2 month option, I will choose 1.5 month, because who will wait for 2 full months and then decide? You cannot do before that. So longer the period, longer is the waiting time, which you don't want. So therefore, European options with longer time are not valued much, but American options with longer time are valued much. Dividends, if any, expected during the life of the option. This is another point. Okay, so time to maturity. Now dividend on stock have the effect of reducing the stock price on X dividend date. This affects the value of call option adversely and put option favorably. So if we are paying dividend today, if the dividend is paid, the very next day the stock price basically falls down a little. Now that is a normal tendency, because people start feeling company has distributed all its profit. That means company has no growth plans. The company might not have new projects. So usually people take dividend and then think of selling those shares. So the price comes down a little. Not everybody does it, but a few of them do it. So next day, usually the price will be low. In that case, your stock price falls down. If your stock price falls down, call option says S naught minus E. S naught is falling down. That means call option is losing. So if you give dividend, it will affect the call option adversely, badly. Whereas it will affect the put option favorably in a right way, because put option says E minus S naught. That is, exercise price should be higher and spot price should be lower. If you all are observing whatever I am teaching you, I am using the same formula, S naught minus E for call or E minus S naught for put. This you need to remember in the entire chapter, because it's very, very important. Every explanation depends on this. And if this is clear, you will understand all the topics. The next is the risk-free interest rate. Yeah. The last 2 points, we'll finish it. One second. Risk-free interest rate. An increase in the interest rate leads to an increase in the expected growth rate in the stock option price on the one hand, and decrease in the present value of any cash flow received by the holder of an option on the other hand. Both these have an adverse impact on the value of the put option. Call option price would increase with an increase in the interest rate. So what they are saying, if the interest rate increases, it will lead to increase in the expected growth rate in the stock option price. So what happens usually is, if the interest rates are increasing in the market, it is quite obvious that the company will have to pay you more than the interest rate. So you start expecting more returns from the stock, and the stock prices increase because the market is supporting favorably. On the loan, interest rates are increasing. That means, on the deposits or investments, interest rate are increasing. That means people are earning more income, and therefore the stock market will also boom and the stocks will also start increasing. So when you increase the interest rate, your stock prices increases. It will affect the call option positively, and it will affect the put option adversely, because call option says stock price minus exercise price. So higher the stock price, it's really good. But put option says exercise price minus stock price. So if the stock prices are higher, negative returns you will start getting. So they basically say that it's good for a call option for interest rate to increase because stock prices increase, but it is bad for a put option. Another effect, they say, if the stock price increases, there is decrease in the present value of any cash flow received by the holder of an option. So how the present value of cash flow will decrease? For finding the present value of cash flow, we basically use the interest rate as discount rate. So higher the interest rate, at a higher rate you're discounting your cash flows and getting it to present value. So that's why they say, if you find from present value time, the option holder, whatever gain he receives, will come down. So there are two effects basically. Just remember, if interest rate increases, call option is good because stock prices are increasing. If interest rate decreases, it is bad for a call option. And exact opposite happens to the put option. Next is volatility in stock price. Now here I'm not talking about only change in the price, but I'm talking about volatility. That means the risk or the standard deviation. So if the risk factor is high, there's more risk, the stock price are very volatile, shares are dropping fast and increasing, they don't have stability, there is no straight line in the graph, it's going up steep high and then falling very badly. Such kind of volatilities, if they are there, that means there is huge risk. And if there is risk, the owner of the call benefits from the price increase, whereas the put option will benefit from the price decrease. So whenever the price increases, call option holder will gain. Whenever it drops sharply, put option holder will gain. So the value of both call and put exhibit increase with increase in the degree of volatility. So if the risk is more, if the volatility is high, it is good for both call and put option, because usually we trade in derivative instruments to avoid market risk. The more the market risk, the more people will trade in options, and whenever the price increases, call option will gain. Whenever it decreases, put option will gain. So volatility or risk affects positively for both the contracts. So these are the basic factors. First was stock price, then exercise price, then we saw time to maturity, dividend, interest rate, and volatility. So these are the factors that affect the option pricing. Now in the afternoon class, I'll explain you these payoff graphs. They're not clearly visible here, but afternoon we will actually solve and draw these graphs. So you will understand it better there. So payoff graphs we will do in the afternoon. Okay. 1:30 class. Just 2 more minutes. We'll 5 more minutes. I'll just finish this fast. Value of option on expiry. The value of a call on expiry date will depend upon whether the stock price on that date will finish above or below the exercise price. So if I have to find the value of a call option, I have to check whether the stock price is more or less than the exercise price. If the stock price is more than the exercise price, the call option holder will gain. Otherwise, he will lose. It will become out of the money. So it is like S naught minus E. If S naught is more, the option is in the money. If S naught is less, the option is out of the money. And if the option is exactly same, it is at the money. So that is what they're trying to tell you. They're finding the moneyness here. Okay, the same thing is explained. If the value of the stock price decreases, it is out of the money and you will have a zero profit. If the value of the stock price increases, it is at the money. Sorry, if the value is exactly equal, it is at the money, zero profit. And if the value of the stock price finishes above the exercise price, it is in the money and you will gain. How much will be your gain? S1 minus E or S0 minus E. You can see the last line. They have taken the formula of intrinsic value, maximum of 0 or S0 minus E. Now for put option, it is E minus S0. So if the value of the stock price increases, it becomes out of the money because exercise price is less, E minus S0 you're doing. If both are same, it is at the money, and if the stock price decreases, it is in the money, you will start gaining. So the formula is E minus S1. Now arbitrage. I had told you we'll be doing these sums also in the afternoon. Okay, so I'll just tell you what is the meaning of it so that afternoon it becomes easy. If the actual price of a call or put option on the expiry date is not in line with our theoretical value, arbitrage opportunities will open. So we calculate a option price. If our calculated value is not equal to the market value, then there is arbitrage. This can be explained as below. If the premium is less than the intrinsic value, the option is undervalued. If the premium is more than the intrinsic value, it is overvalued. So if the option when I do sums, I'll explain you better. Here they are just comparing the premium and the intrinsic value. Intrinsic value, you know how to find maximum of 0 or S naught minus E for a call option, and maximum of 0 or E minus S naught for a put option. So once you find the intrinsic value and they've given you the option premium, you need to compare both. If both are not equal, there is arbitrage opportunity, and if the premium is less than the intrinsic value, the option is undervalued, whereas if it is more, it is overvalued. So when it is undervalued, we basically buy, and when it is overvalued, we sell. So how the action will be done is given in that particular table. This practically with sums I will explain you, and then I'll go back to the table again to show you how in the sums we worked out for that. Okay, any doubts you can ask? Anybody
No,
having
ma'am.
any doubts? Okay, then
No, ma'am.
if there are no doubts, you can type your roll numbers in the chat box and leave the meeting. Afternoon at 1:30 we will take problems.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.